All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive with me. Today, we are going to be looking at something pretty interesting. It's this opinion piece
Okay.
called Pasted Text from this series, Coffee Talk. And it's all about the influence of money in politics.
Right.
Specifically, how Elon Musk's spending at political rallies might mirror tactics that we see in countries that have less established democracies.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a pretty thought-provoking piece.
Yeah, that's exactly what it aims to do, right? Just get people thinking and talking about this stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
And the author here, they take a pretty bold stance. They
Yeah.
compare Musk's large payments at Trump rallies to something you might see in like a developing nation,
Right.
where vote buying isn't uncommon.
Yeah, so, at first glance, you see a billionaire supporting a political figure, and it doesn't seem that crazy, right?
Right.
But what makes this piece so interesting, I think, is that comparison that they're drawing. Can you just kind of unpack that a little bit more for us?
Yeah, definitely. So the author isn't actually accusing Musk of outright bribery.
Okay.
It's more about a subtle kind of influence.
Right.
So think of it like this, in some developing nations, politicians might hand out cash or goods directly in exchange for votes, right?
Oh, I see.
But here, the author argues that Musk's big, reimbursements at these rallies are creating a similar kind
It's
of,
a more effect.
yeah, a sense of obligation and influence, even though it's not quite as direct.
Right, so it's less about handing somebody money and saying, hey, vote for this person. It's more about
Yeah.
cultivating that loyalty and kind of swaying public opinion in a way that
Yeah.
is similar to how it might be done in other countries.
Exactly. And the piece highlights that both of these tactics, while they're different in how they actually look,
Right.
they have the same goal, which is influencing those political outcomes through finances.
Yeah, and that's what I think is so scary about this, right?
Yeah.
Because it makes you wonder, like, how can we have these free and fair elections when you have these kinds of financial maneuvers going on?
Exactly. And the piece really digs into that. It argues that, focusing on money in politics rather than, qualifications or actual policy,
Right.
it undermines the whole point of democracy.
Totally.
It's shifting that focus away from the real issues and towards spectacle and, financial incentives.
Yeah, and the article doesn't just stop at the individual voters being swayed. It kind of goes bigger than that, talking about the U.S. political landscape as a whole.
Absolutely. The U.S. already has to deal with the influence of wealth in politics, right?
For sure.
We have campaign contributions, we have super PACs,
Right.
which are political action committees that can raise and spend unlimited amounts of money
Wow.
to support or oppose candidates.
Crazy.
But what the author is saying is that Musk's actions are even more concerning
I see.
because they are so blatant and transactional.
Yeah, it's almost like he's saying, hey, this is what my support costs,
Exactly.
which is a little bit jarring.
Yeah, it is. It's very different from the more veiled ways that wealth usually exerts influence.
Definitely.
And that's what makes it so dangerous. If financial power is really dictating political outcomes, then everyday citizens' voices just get drowned out.
Totally.
And elections become less about representing the people and more about, serving the interests of these wealthy donors.
Yeah, that's a scary thought for sure. The author definitely paints a bit of a bleak picture.
Yeah.
But they don't leave us just hanging. There's a pretty clear call to action.
There is. They urge readers to really recognize and challenge these practices that we're seeing, both in the U.S. and globally.
Okay.
It's a plea to protect those principles of a fair and just political system, no matter where they might be under threat.
Yeah. So to kind of sum up everything we've talked about today, this deep dive has really gotten us thinking about how money is used in politics and how these different tactics can really be a threat to fair elections.
Definitely. And it leaves us with a pretty important question, I think.
Yeah.
We've seen how money can really distort things. But what can we actually do to ensure that everyday people still have a voice?
Right.
Are there ways to level the playing field?
That's something to think about for sure.
Yeah.
And maybe a good starting point for our listeners would be, looking into campaign finance laws or exploring how different political systems deal with, wealthy donors and these kinds of problems.
Great ideas.
Well, thanks for joining us for another thought-provoking deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you all next time.